folks, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Natasha and I do book things here. Today's video is going to be my 7 most surprising reads of 2017. Not all of these books were released in 2017, I always touch on that. These are books that I was surprised by. So what that means is that they are books that I did find pretty highly rated. I think all of them except for one are 5-star books. Surprising to me is a whole multitude of things, and I have a variety of reasons as to why they were surprising, which I'll touch on for each individual book. So the first book that surprised me this year was one that I did pick up randomly for a library sale, and then I heard a bunch of people talking about it and then finally got around to reading it, and it's actually quickly becoming one of my favorite series. That is The Diviners by Libre. I love this cover and this edition. If they would stop making them and changing them into 1,000 other covers. For those of you who don't know, The Diviners is a paranormal supernatural YA series. Totally up my alley, by the way. I realized really quickly that I like sort of fantastical elements as long as there's some sort of paranormal element to it. So I think paranormal is now becoming one of my favorite genres. So this is set in the 1920s. It follows a multitude of characters, really diverse cast of people, which is awesome. And basically they are diviners, so they have different types of powers and stuff like that. I don't want to get too much into it because I knew pretty much nothing going into this and loved it. And just know that if you like sort of paranormal elements, a little bit of the occult, there is some spookiness, underlying spookiness, eeriness to this, that you'll love it. One thing that really surprised me though was the talks of the 1920s in this is amazing. If you know anything about 1920s culture, it's touched on really well. And then I was surprised to see different races and cultures in this as well, which is definitely a reason why it's rated 5 stars. This is heavy, so I'm gonna put it down. But yeah, I absolutely love this and was surprised at how much I loved it, basically. Next is another book that I was surprised at how much I liked it. That is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. I was told by a couple of people that if I hated if I hated The Rosie Project, I would hate this. And The Rosie Project and The Rosie Effect are actually some of my least favorite books of the year. But I ended up reading this and gave it 5 stars. I loved this. This follows the story of Eleanor, which I love because that's my mom's name. I've talked about that before. I buy books that have Eleanor in the title because I love it. It follows the story of Eleanor, who is 30, and she is a very, very eccentric character. She's dealing with a lot of stuff from her childhood, which plays out throughout the entire book. She's very eccentric in the way that she speaks and thinks and acts with people and different social situations. And yeah, I felt a lot of feels to this, and really, I don't want to say it connected with the character, but because we have different lives and I don't necessarily relate, but connected to her, understood her and felt like I knew who she was. Yeah, at some point in this book she gets a cat, and it's the greatest thing that I just loved the relationship between her and the cat, and just the friends that she makes throughout the book is really, really good. But I was honestly shocked at how much I like this because people related it to books that I really hated. So that's what this book did, was really sort of teach me that even though people can recommend things, and I may recommend things or say, oh, this book is similar to this, if you're interested in reading it, just read it, because you never know, you know, some of the things that you may not have liked in a book may be better done in a different book. So yeah, I really liked this and was pleasantly surprised. Book that I went in knowing basically most of what could be known about this book. I am the kind of person that I don't mind being spoiled for books if it's a subject matter that I find interesting, and then I will read it anyway. I'm the worst like that. I will know entirely what happens in a movie and go, oh yeah, I'll still watch that, because at that point then it's not surprising for me. It's kind of like an anxiety thing almost, where if I know what's to come, I'm not shocked by it. So I find comfort in knowing what happens. Discuss that in the comments down below. All the Ugly and Wonderful Things by Bryn Greenwood. And yet this book still surprised me in the way that it made me think, in the way that it made me feel about the relationship that takes place in this book. I've talked about this at length on my channel, but for those of you who might not know, it follows the story of Wavy, who is an 8-year-old girl, right from her 8-year-old life up to 21, and she's dealing with some like really intense, shitty like home life situations, and this guy sort of like swoops in to take care of her, and he's in his 20s. And yeah, there's some definite like pedophilia creepiness going on in this, so trigger warning for that if you're at all sensitive about that. Don't read it, like really, honestly, don't. But basically, this follows that kind of story and provides a lot of different people's views in on that. There's a lot of different characters, but what surprised me about this was, again, just like how it made me feel. Because I remember hearing about it and going, woohoo, like I already know that I'm not going to agree with that relationship, yet this book tested me in that at some point I was rooting for their relationship because it's the only good thing that is in this kid's life, and like that's just, it blew my mind in how it made me feel. I didn't give this 5 stars. This is the book that I gave 4 stars because there were some definite issues with it, but yeah, like it definitely made me feel a certain way that I was surprised to feel, basically. Next book was surprising to me in a very different way from what I mentioned, and that is that this book is a book that my friend wrote, and I couldn't just go throughout the year and not mention it, and I also don't want to be biased because it's my friend, so naturally I'm gonna kind of think my friend's work is really good. It was surprising to me because it's not a genre that I typically like, and it was surprising to sort of see and read how my friend's thought process was, or like how he managed to write something so interesting. Anyway, so I do want to quickly mention this because it's just incredible to me that like my friends have different brains. That sounds so stupid, but hopefully you guys know what I mean by that. So this book is The Saints of Paradise Valley by my friend. C. Ezelin is what his pen name is. And this follows the story of a 17-year-old girl named Starseed, and she's living in like an underground society, kind of dystopian world. And basically this world is like shattered from like a technological revolution. Like it's so fascinating, and there's so many different cool things in this, and like fun places to explore and imagery and stuff like that, that like I was just like so surprised reading it that like my friend wrote this. It's just, I don't know, it's just cool, okay? So yeah, I did want to mention that because I found it so surprising. It was a 5-star read for me. Again, probably biased because he's my friend, but that's okay. I do want to reread this and reread it critically because I read it, loved it, and hailed it in like a day back last January, and I haven't revisited it. So now that I've read a lot more books this year, I want to go back and like actually read it critically for him because I want to actually give him some feedback. So I was just surprised that my friend could write an awesome book, basically. So it wouldn't be me without a book that surprised me emotionally, because I am a crier despite my tough girl appearance. No, I'm just kidding. I'm definitely an emotional person. I cry at friggin' everything. Like my cat looks at me the wrong way and I'm bawling, like I'm that person. So this is a book that I had a feeling would make me cry when I heard it mentioned. But then I got it and read it, and like I had like snot bubbles and like driplets. So yeah, this is El Defo. I have mentioned this again pretty at length in my channel, but this book is fucking everything to me. This follows the story of a little bunny who is deaf, and she has like an assisted hearing device. I am hard of hearing. I have a significant hearing loss. I do wear hearing aids, and even though she comes about it by meningitis and she loses her hearing, I kind of grew up with it and it got worse as I'm getting older, of course. Great, by the way. It shows different scenarios in her life that I've never seen explained. There's one part in this that like I don't even know if I can mention because it makes me cry so much. Basically, she goes over to this girl's house for a sleepover, and they're having fun and she's able to sort of hear them. Now, you know, that she has her like hearing device and stuff. But at some point the girls are like, okay, like we'll turn the lights off and we'll whisper in the dark. And she's like, well great, like the lights are out and I can't read lips now and I can't hear anybody. And like, whoo, that fucking hits home, man. because like that's just something that happens in my life. Like I take my hearing aids out, I can't hear you in the dark. Like I can't see you and read lips, then I can't hear you. Yeah, like just all of this made me cry like a lot. And so it was surprising. That's just like one part of it that made me cry. Like in like an hour, and was an emotional mess of a person from reading this. Of all the books that I like this year, if you have a kid who is hard of hearing, if you have, you know, a family member in your life that's hard of hearing and you want to try to explain it to kids so they have a better idea of like, you know, why is maybe grandpa wear hearing aids, or like why does, you know, grandma maybe not hear me as well, and like, or, you know, young people like me who have hearing loss, you know, if they want a way for kids to understand that, get them this book because it is fantastic. It's beautiful. But yeah, the artwork is super cute, and it's yeah, a very emotional read to me, and I was surprised at how emotional it made me. So next on this list is a book that is surprising to me but shouldn't be surprising to anyone else. And that is Harry Potter #1, or Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. People think it's funny I call them Harry Potter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but that's just how I call series. Read this for the very first time at 28 years old. You know, after obviously hearing about Harry Potter all of my life. I was in English class in high school. I was the only person who hadn't read it. Had like a whole class discussion where I'm like, hey guys, haven't read this book. Like, so yeah, I grew up all my life sort of like hearing things about Harry Potter. You can't naturally live in the world, I think, at this point and not know something about Harry Potter. I had also never watched the movies, which I recently watched all of the movies in like pretty much one go. So I read this book and it was so cute and so whimsical and magical and descriptive, and I think knowing what I know from pop culture and seeing what I've seen about Harry Potter made the reading experience that much more magical, because I could go, oh yeah, that's that's that reference that I vaguely know, and yeah, it was just really cute. So I was surprised, I guess, at the complexity of it and like the complex imagery of it. Even while I was reading it, I felt like I'm actually inhaling this book really slowly. It's taken me a while to finish the rest of them, but I just feel like because I now have an image in my head of what's going on in the book, I want to read it slowly. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, definitely surprised by Harry Potter. Loved the first one. I didn't like the second one as much, but the first one was really cute. I loved it, so 5 out of 5. Would read this again because it was cute. The last book on this list is one that surprised me in terms of teaching me things that I didn't otherwise know about. So this happened to be learning about different culture, which is Punjabi culture and Indian culture, which I love to learn about. And so the book that surprised me was Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows. This is a copy that I got in Italy on my vacation, which has a, you know, a personal significance to me. But this story was so good and surprised me in so many ways. So this follows a young girl in the community who is going to her temple to teach English to these older widows, learning a little bit of English, but also expressing their stories, and they're all very, very erotic stories, and it is fantastic. And a lot of talks of food and like why certain women wear this and why certain, you know, arranged marriages take place like this and that. Like I literally was reading this book and had my phone on Google going, oh, okay, what's that? Like what does this mean exactly? It's just so I could get like a better idea. But yeah, I was surprised by that, and I was surprised by how much this book made me want to learn more and like really broadened my mind into a culture that, you know, certain things I definitely didn't know. I didn't know that like the widows wore white. I didn't know that, and now I do. So I'm like, okay, that's fantastic and cool. There's that, and then the stories themselves are amazing. The talks of like arranged marriages and what that means for the older generation versus the like newer generation. The difference between men and women in temple. It was just all like fantastic. It was just really good, and so I was just surprised that I took so much, I guess, away from it. But now I just want to read more stories from different cultures than my own and just learn like a bunch of knowledge. So yeah, this book definitely surprised me and really like pushed forward that I do want to learn more about this. So yeah, definitely recommend if you're looking for a really interesting read. It has like fun erotic elements, all that sort of cultural discussion, and then also a like mystery thriller aspect. There's a lot packed into this, and it's like really, really good. Everything that wraps up the books that I was most surprised by this year. I do hope you guys like it. Let me know down in the comments below if you've read any of these, and yeah, I do hope you guys are doing good, and until my next video, I will talk to all of you soon. Bye!